Well, I'm leaving. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of really weird things. But this was too much. So I'm leaving. I've been trying to forget when they brought him into this. The one who called himself God's son. They brought him in for a trial of sorts. Now, I had heard about his antics, so I expected him to be the loudmouth, boisterous person that everybody said he was. And when I saw him, of course I knew that the rumors were true. He was confident. He never looked down, always chin up. There was a little bit of back and forth between the Jews and Pilate, and it was determined that he was going to be flogged. It was weird, though. He didn't get angry or confused. He didn't try to fight or argue his own case. He just sort of went with it, as if he thought he was the one in control of everything. I remember thinking, if there's going to be anybody who's under the delusion of being the Son of God, this guy's just as good as anybody else. And if this Son of God needed a little bit of humbling, I was going to be the one to do it for him. I mean, it was my job to teach such arrogant people what it meant to bow to their Roman superiors. And so we helped him. Tied him to a post, and we let our whips and our staffs and our fists rain down their humbling fury upon him. The whole time, he kept this same look about him, and it infuriated me, so I poured it on him like I'd never done before. No matter, though, the whole time he kept this look out that you could feel in your bones. I can't imagine what he was thinking or what he was feeling, but the entire time he was either staring right at me, which was unnerving, or he had this far-off look in his eye. Kind of like he was looking through me, like I wasn't even part of his world. And that was even more unnerving. I mean, there he was with a whirlwind of violence all around him. And despite the cries of pain, not once did he yell at us or shoot us an ugly look. Nothing we did could change that either. I mean, the most unnerving thing is not even once did he ask us to stop. I mean, everybody asks us to stop. I'm thinking, this guy's either crazy or he's got something on straight that I'm just clearly not getting. I mean, how could he be in the eye of a hurricane and yet be at total peace with it all? I just didn't get it.
How did that one feel, O King of the Jews? My demons screeched so proudly. With every blow of staff and fist, they cackled and bellowed more loudly. Soon you'll give in, you'll break and then sin, then I'll get the victory. Then every soul, past, present, and future, will bow down and worship me.
Yet while your rage churned all around Jesus, his righteousness he would not release. Though standing in the eye of your hurricane, Jesus was at perfect peace.
Only a few short hours were all that were left for me to achieve my goal. Intensity increasing with each passing second, convinced torture would take its toll. Admit what it's true, what they're doing to you makes you want to hate these men. Go ahead and sin, just give right in, then I'll get the final amen.
Yet while your rage churned all around Jesus, his righteousness he would not release. Though standing in the eye of your hurricane, Jesus was at perfect peace.
I'll not let up, I'll make you crack. Your love, it can't hold up. You were close in the garden, I heard your prayer. You don't want to take this cup. Come on, Jesus, just one selfish thought, then all will stand condemned. Without hope or reason to make sense of this life, all righteousness will be stemmed.
Yet while your rage churned all around Jesus, his righteousness he would not release. Though standing in the eye of your hurricane, Jesus was at perfect peace. Open your hearts if you dare to see how Jesus survived Satan's storm. His pure and simple agape love shielded him from the demon swarm. Because while your rage churned all around Jesus, his righteousness he would not release. Though standing in the eye of your hurricane,
Jesus was at perfect peace.
The best I could figure was that this guy just thought the beatings would all be over soon, and that he'd be free to walk again. So, we brought him back to Pilate, all bloodied up, and I thought he was just going to let him go. But, as fate would have it, Jesus was somewhat reluctantly sentenced to death. And I remember thinking, we're going to get to see the real Jesus now that he's facing death. Me and some of the other guards grabbed Jesus and we brought him up to the crucifixion site. This is when men break. I've seen it 100 times. When they are looking death straight in the face and there's nothing they can do about their fate, they break. And I was looking forward to watching this guy's strength crumble to pieces. So there we were, walking him to his death. But he would stop and talk to women in the crowd and tell them not to weep for him. But he told them they should be crying for themselves and for their kids. I mean, what kind of warped perspective and oversized ego did this guy have to think that his death would be harder on these women and their children than on himself? Well, I had the honor of pounding the nails into this Jesus. I had the pleasure of pounding the nails. And so, I wanted him to know who was really in control here. And like I've done in every single crucifixion I've pretty much ever been a part of, I smirked at him as I drove the nails into his flesh. I would never let it show, but what he did next crushed me. He looked straight through me, and he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." Forgive? Here's this guy praying to his Father, asking him to forgive us, to forgive me for what I was doing? And what did he mean? They don't know what they're doing. Was he trying to insult us? I mean, we know our jobs, and we do them very proficiently. didn't really seem like an insult, so. I do have to admit, the smirk on my face wavered a little bit at this point. And it's at this point that I'm thinking, this guy is completely different than anyone I've ever met, let alone crucified. And what was with this father thing anyway? I mean, usually when we hang people up on a cross, they'll scream, "God, oh God," or something like that, but I'd never heard somebody pray to their God and call him Father. Well, I asked around a little bit, and one thing that's pretty consistent is that this Jesus guy only ever really refers to his God as Father. Now, I thought that was pretty weird. Maybe even a little bit arrogant. But, I don't know, I mean, guy's got a right to call his God Father if he wants, right? So, there he was, hanging up there. And he would look around, and he'd even talk to some of the people that had gathered there. There was this kid there with a woman who I later learned was Jesus' mother. And I think he made them promise to be family or something like that. And there was this other guy hanging up there with Jesus. A thief, if I remember correctly. This guy had the weirdest request I have ever heard at a crucifixion. This guy was literally begging Jesus to remember him in some kingdom. I'm like, y'all are going to be dead in a matter of hours. There's not much time to be remembering anything. All right, if you think that request was weird, get a load of the response from God's Son. Jesus is up there and he turns to this guy and he says, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Paradise? Was this guy delusional or what? Huh. Now, do have to admit, I was pretty shaken up at this point. But there's 1 minute, this one moment in time that haunts me. Jesus had been up there a while. And he was looking pretty close to death. And then he got this wild look about him. Like he was in agony. The best I could figure was something inside of him snapped. And he woke up to where he was and what was happening to him. And he just screamed, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And that's the moment I'll never forget. He broke. I mean, up until this point, I really respected this guy. I almost even liked him for the kind of man he had to be, to endure what was going on to him, and not once let loose a evil glare or a hateful word. Come on, like, who couldn't respect a man with strength like that? But this new Jesus, I didn't like him one bit. Something had changed, made him different, weak. He'd gone all limp and hopeless. Made me as uncomfortable as I could possibly have been to see it. If someone or something did forsake this guy, I just hope that they got reacquainted real soon. Return this guy to his former strength. wanted was for him to go back to calling his God Father again. For him to be strong again. Well, I don't know what happened. Something re-clicked or re-snapped. And Jesus was back to calling God his Father again. Now, he was pretty close to death. But he said, as loud as he could, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." It was like he wanted everyone there to hear those words for some reason. It was like he was letting everyone know that everything was still being done on his terms and in his timing. The Jesus of strength was back, even as close to death as he was. Now, it took just about everything out of him to say those words. But I heard him say one more thing before he died. Just before he let go, Jesus said, "It is finished." The words were barely on his lips, but I heard them. And as close as I was, I could have sworn he had a smile on the corner of his mouth. And that's how he died. And what's even crazier is what happened right after he died. As soon as Jesus was gone, there was an earthquake, and everything went pitch black. It was beyond creepy. And I just remember thinking to myself, this guy really was the Son of God. Now, some of the guys in my unit say that I said that out loud, but I'm leaving. So I went home that night and I tried to forget everything that had happened. But I mean, how do you forget an earthquake? How do you forget the area going so dark you could feel it? And honestly, one doesn't really forget crucifying a man who just might not have been lying about being the Son of God. I mean, I don't even remember ever having a bad day at work, but that was too much for one day. I had no idea how I was going to work the next day. I was a Centurion basket case. And I knew there were going to be more criminals that I was going to have to drive nails into in the coming days. I remember thinking, if I get one more Son of God, I'm volunteering for a new position. Something safe and lighthearted, like Riot Squad. Well, sometime after Jesus had died, I heard that these Jews were coming to take his body and put it in some tomb. Now, the evening of the next day, boss man comes around. He's looking to put a group of us together to go and guard the tomb. Well, apparently, I hadn't had enough of this Jesus guy, because I threw my hat into this one too. Ha! Little did I know what I was getting myself into. We were told to be constantly vigilant towards anyone who even tried to come close to the tomb that day. We saw a couple of passerby. They were talking about the guy, telling stories.
No, really, he walked on water.
Yeah. Most of them were pretty far-fetched. And so, we watched closely and glared intimidatingly towards anybody who even tried to get close to the tomb that day. Because we're rough and tough. I'm not scared of anything. And don't mess with us Centurions, right? And then we are frozen with fear. I mean, we are really scared to death. I have no idea what had just happened, but clearly something had. I mean, the stone in front of the tomb was not in front of the tomb anymore, and there were these scary-looking shiny guys sitting on top of the stone. These were the most intimidating men I had ever seen, and I knew I better not cross them or try to put authority on them. I mean, get a load of this. I'll tell you, they were just as crazy as they were scary. They were talking to these two women who I remembered from the crowd on the day that we crucified Jesus. And one of them was telling the women, Jesus had risen from the dead. Risen from the dead, he said. One of them was telling the women that they needed to go and tell all their friends that Jesus wasn't in the tomb anymore and that he was alive again. They walked away in a bit of a joyful stupor. And I remember overhearing them talking to themselves about how they wished they could have been there just a little bit earlier so that they could have been in the tomb when Jesus rose from the dead. Now, maybe I was going crazy, but I had to admit, I didn't have an explanation for why the stone wasn't in front of the tomb anymore, or why the body wasn't even in the tomb anymore, or how all of us Centurions were just randomly scared stiff by these shiny guys. I knew I was going to have to give a report on this, and I had nothing better to give them than Jesus rose from the dead. I had no idea how the higher-ups were going to react to this. Come to think of it, if Jesus really did rise from the dead, have minded being in that tomb either. Saying as, I'm the one who crucified him. What would it have been like to be in the tomb when Jesus breathed again for the first time? Well, given everything that had just happened, and given the fact that the body was still missing, pretty much knew we were going to be out of the job. Or killed. Or, worst of all, mocked by all of the other guards. So, decided to pack my things and leave Jerusalem. I have a cousin, who's a centurion, named Cornelius. He lives in Caesarea. I'm actually on my way there now to see if I can work for him. Luckily, I'm 100% sure that being that far away from all of this, I won't be hearing about this Jesus guy anymore.